Mars 2020 Perseverance. It's not your father's dune buggy. I'm Tonya Hall, and joining me is Matt Wallace, Mars 2020 Perseverance Deputy Project Manager at JPL. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Give us a brief summary of your professional background, including your work with previous Mars rovers.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to work on all 5 Mars rovers. This is my 5th, believe it or not, and I can tell you it's good work if you can get it. It's a lot of fun. I started on the Sojourner Rover, which was just a small microwave-sized rover that launched in 1996 and landed in 1997. It was really just a demonstration mission. And then I moved on to Spirit and Opportunity, which landed in 2004. I was the spacecraft manager for the Curiosity mission, which landed at Gale Crater in 2012. And now I've been working on this one for about 8 years. I started this one almost right after we launched Curiosity in 2012.
What a list of accomplishments. What are the goals of the Perseverance mission?
We have several goals. One is to bring our science suite to Jezero Crater and to characterize the geology and history of the landing site. The second goal is to look for potential biosignatures. And biosignatures are indications of potential ancient life on Mars. Mars was once much more like our own planet. It was wet. It had magnetic poles to protect it from radiation, and we believe it was an environment that was potentially conducive to the initiation of life, much as life initiated here on Earth about the same period of time. So that's the second objective, is to look for those potential signatures. And the third is to actually cache samples on the surface of Mars after having characterized the geology and the potential for life at the landing site. And so we hope to cache somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 samples that can be returned to the Earth so that those samples can be investigated with the full power of the terrestrial science equipment that's available to us here on the Earth. And again, the key is really to look for those faint trace signatures of chemical signatures from billions of years ago on the surface of Mars. And then we have one more kind of unique objective. It's the first mission where I could say this, and that's to do technology experiments which feed into the types of capabilities that we'll need for future robotic exploration and ultimately for human exploration on the surface of Mars. And so we're carrying a suite of payloads and experiments that fit into that objective as well.
How has the technology of Mars rovers evolved since Sojourner? What's changed, and what have we learned?
Well, we've learned that Mars is not an easy place to operate and to survive. To be honest with you, it's pretty harsh. You know, the environment, the temperatures get down to about minus 130, 140 degrees Celsius pretty much every night. And then they heat up almost to room temperature. And so those thermal cycles are very difficult for engineering systems to tolerate, as you know. And so it takes a lot of effort to design in the capability to survive for months and years and on the surface of Mars, just from the thermal environment. And of course, there's other harsh environmental factors as well. The surface is covered essentially in dust, fine grained dust. It's kind of like a talcum powder, and that dust has the ability to really penetrate into many of the mechanisms and moving parts that we have on the vehicle. And so we've had to learn how to deal with that as well for these longer life missions. I think those are a couple of the key places that we've really improved our technological capability. And then, of course, we're really starting to take advantage of the miniaturization of many of the electronics and sensors that are available now. We have a set of very powerful spectrometers out on the end of the robot arm that are really just a fraction of the size that these instruments would have been 10 or 15 years ago. And they're able to really survey our targets, our science targets, at very, very fine resolution. The spot size on the raster is just 100 microns in size, and so we can produce a map at very high resolution of the rocks and the targets that we want to look at. That's the kind of technology that we've been able to bring to the table most recently on these newer missions. And of course, just general autonomy. We've really stepped up our game with respect to autonomous driving, avoiding hazards, doing that efficiently. We're going to drive about 3 times faster than Curiosity drove as a result. We're using cell phone technology in some of our advanced advanced experiments, like the helicopter drone. We're really trying to utilize the capabilities that the market has developed. We're also flying ruggedized commercial cameras, much like these extreme sport cameras that your kids might have, that my kid has. We've actually distributed those around the spacecraft, and we're going to use that technology to, the first time ever, get high definition video of a spacecraft landing on another planet. So these are some of the advancements, in capabilities that we've had over the years.
Tell us about Ingenuity and how this could help revolutionize exploration of the planet.
Ingenuity reminds me a lot of the Sojourner Rover, which, as I mentioned, was the first one I worked on. The Sojourner Rover was on a spacecraft called Mars Pathfinder, and Mars Pathfinder was designed to demonstrate low-cost delivery systems. It actually landed inside a set of airbags and getting us back to the surface of Mars at reasonable budgetary levels. And kind of as an afterthought, late in the game, if it could possibly work, if it fit, we decided to take along a small rover. And sure enough, every week they threatened to throw the rover off, and we managed to keep it on. And here we are, a couple decades later on our 5th Mars rover, right? It was a transformative technology for us. It taught us that having just a little bit of mobility on the planet would take us through some very diverse different regions and targets. And the science community understood the power of just having that small amount of traversability and mobility. From then on, our major surface missions have all been mobile. I think of the helicopter in much the same way. It has the opportunity to really cover a lot of ground fast. We can survey areas of Mars that we can't get to with roving vehicles, steep cliffs and escarpments, and falling up to crater rims and things like that. Now this helicopter, like Sojourner, is just a very limited technology experiment. We're going to be happy just to get it to fly a couple times here. It's a high risk, high reward sort of thing, but it does have the potential to change, some of the ways we explore and operate, not just on Mars, but there are plans in work, for instance, for a quadcopter to go to some of the other moons of other planets now as well. So powered aerial flight could be a powerful change in our, in our modality for getting to different places on Mars.
That's exciting. Is it true that we'll be sending a piece of Mars back to the red planet on this trip?
That is true. Yeah, we have an instrument called Sherlock, and it sits out on the end of the robot arm. It's a pretty capable. It's a very capable Raman spectrometer, and it's actually paired with a microscope capability, which I think is very cutely called Watson. So we got Sherlock and Watson, their team, out on the end of the robot arm, And these instruments need calibration targets and that sort of thing, as you might imagine, for surface operations, to kind of get baselines for the science instruments. And so in addition to a number of other sort of more standard calibration targets, the Sherlock team is taking a Mars meteorite, which was collected in Antarctica, which is well characterized. They're going to put it on their target plate, and they're going to take it back to Mars with them so that we can actually look at a piece of Mars that we know in a Martian environment, with Martian atmospheres and Martian and all the other environments associated with Mars. So it's an interesting concept. I thought it was pretty unique and kind of fun to think about.
What's the general sequence of steps and milestones, if you will, that are planned for the launch, or after the launch, rather?
So we're getting close to launch. We've rolled out to the pad, and once we ignite the vehicle, we'll go through the booster burn, the upper stage burn, which will insert us on our trajectory towards Mars. And once we actually have a small period of time where we're in eclipse, where the Earth is blocking the sun, and so our solar rays are shadowed. Once we come out of that shadowed eclipse, we'll turn on our transmitter, and we'll go through what we call initial acquisition. We shorten it up to initial AC, and we'll get our first read from the spacecraft on how it did going through the launch environment and out in space, where it likes to be. Actually, it operates much more in a much more deterministic way, actually, in its native environment. So initial acquisition, and then within a couple months, we'll start preparing to adjust the trajectory of the spacecraft. We'll go through 4, 5, 6 different trajectory correction maneuvers to make sure we hit Mars right where we want to hit it. We actually have an entry, we call it the B plane. We have an entry plane which is very tight, just, you can think of it as maybe a mile by a mile, right? We've flown 100 million miles, and we have to hit this very, very tight entry corridor in order to land successfully at Jezero. And so the navigation is very sophisticated, and it takes a number of trajectory correction maneuvers. And along the way, we'll be doing checkouts of our science instruments and our engineering systems. And then things really start to get exciting when we get to the planet. We'll hit the outer atmosphere at about 12,000 miles an hour. We will hypersonically steer ourselves by rolling our capsule left and right towards Jezero to make sure we land exactly where we want to go. And when we slow down, just due to the ablation heat of the entry capsule, we'll fire our big supersonic parachute. We'll still be traveling at about Mach 2, about 1,000 miles an hour or so through the upper atmosphere of Mars. It's a 70-foot parachute, and it inflates pretty dramatically in about 1/10 of a second. And that'll slow us down to maybe 100 miles an hour or so. And then we drop out of our entry capsule, essentially, and the rover's attached to something called a descent stage, which is a bit like a jetpack, if you will. It's got 8 big main hydrazine engines. As they'll fire, they'll slow us down even more. The rover will deploy down on a tether. It's about a 20-foot tether, and we'll slow and slow and slow until the rover touches down on the surface. Once we determine that we've successfully touched down, we'll cut the cables, cut the tether. The descent stage will fly away, and we'll be ready to start our surface mission. So we call that the 7 minutes of terror. That whole entry, descent, and landing process is completely autonomous. There's no human in the loop, because, of course, the whole thing happens in, as I said, in about 6-7 minutes, and just one-way light time alone is 10 minutes. So you can't joystick it, no human interaction. It's exciting and terrifying part of the mission.
7 minutes of terror. Well, there's a show title. As we reach out and touch our neighboring worlds, and you talked about certainly some milestones that are going to be set for this mission, how does what we learn translate back into the commercialization of space?
we are often, because of the nature of the missions, um, forced into development of sort of first of a kind technologies. Sometimes it has to do with materials. We went through for instance, a forging process on our titanium flexures that we use in our wheels. Which we developed as a kind of a new process. Um, and as we go through that activity of designing and building the spacecraft, we're often producing new types of products and processes that the aerospace industry in general can use. And so that just kind of happens naturally, organically, if you will, as we go through the activity. And then some of these very small technologies, miniaturized sensor technologies, for instance, are also the same types of things that are used in things like the medical field now. So there's very often a side benefit, not just in the aerospace industry, but also in other disciplines and industries as well.
Matt Wallace, Perseverance, Deputy Project Manager at JPL. If somebody wants to connect with you, Matt, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, the best thing I would suggest is to follow along the mission at mars.nasa.gov/Mars 2020, and you'll see all kinds of great information there about the project and the mission. I think there's some links over to some of the team members, including myself. Coming up on the launch, there's a lot of great virtual reality, tools and fun things to do for the family. And we're hoping that we get a lot of people following along with us throughout, not just the launch, but throughout the entire mission and surface activities. It's going to be an exciting mission. I'm looking forward to it, and I think hope everybody else is.
Well, it's certainly positive news, and we're really excited about seeing it with the work that you're doing. Thanks again, Matt.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
And you can find more of my interviews right here or at tonyahall.net. Thanks for watching.